might read it again. Well, it's late at night, but for a change, I have not been up working or drinking or anything. To the contrary, I took a nap after dinner, and then I woke up and I watched some films, and then I finished The Life of Pi, which I've been reading. And that's what this video is going to be about, The Life of Pi. But it's also about it was good. I took a rest. I've been working an incredible amount. My project is coming along nicely. I had a lot of work to do. I'd proved a lot of concepts. It's always a lot of work to time together, and I'm actually working on the video player, which works in a fashion at the moment. I mean, it can play videos. The amazing thing is my system's much more responsive. Like if you click on a video, you get the video and all the comments. You click on another one because they're all ready scanned. Actually, this is another thing because I'm thinking I'm gonna. Uh, I don't know how it could be monetized, but I think it's cool. So maybe monetized as a Kickstarter art project, or it doesn't really matter. I think it's cool enough that I might try to get other people locally involved. But I was thinking of making videos about it, just to have space to think through how I might try to weed out appropriate people to work on it. But anyway, this is about The Life of Pi. Um, so I saw that film, whatever it was, a couple months ago. I was impressed with the beauty of it. I noticed the potential religious preachiness of it. The movie uh, presents itself, which the book doesn't, as a guy with a story that'll make you believe in God. And the book doesn't do that. And but I was curious from seeing the movie. Well, what would the book be like? Because one of the great things about the movie was just it was visually stunning. It had some of the most beautiful and darkly beautiful things. Send a shitter, a shudder and a shiver, a shiver. Like when the boat is. If you haven't seen the movie or read the book, I don't know. No point in watching this video. And spoilers, I've already probably. But when the boat is sinking, when his uncle's swimming through the pool and it turns into swimming through the sky, when the fish are going underneath him, that island. The book doesn't have that pastoral quality. Sometimes he describes the situation, but he doesn't do it with that delicate care of beautiful cinematography. But I could see how a filmmaker would read the book and see that in the book. Um, but I guess some other comparisons. The book is even more brutal than the movie. This is one of the interesting things I found about the movie, that it had this great beauty, and that beauty kind of hid how terrible the story was. Um, and now Apocalypse Now is also a beautiful movie, but they're hellishly beautiful. Jungles on fire, dark bamboo cages. It makes Apocalypse Now all the more Apocalypse Nowish. Whereas in Life of Pi, the movie, um, this element of beauty is more direct, and he's talking about God and his spirituality, and he believes in he's a Hindu, a Christian, and a Muslim, and they cancel out. They make it less obvious just how brutal the movie is. There's a similar thing going on in the book, but the book is ridiculously brutal. Uh, the hyena goes in and eats the horse from the inside out, and it's alive, and he's sucking out the eyes of fish, and he's talking about the juices and all the various kinds of animals. Incredible. And it would be a whole different book if he hadn't brought in this allegory, whatever he's trying to say. And it's a very carefully constructed tale. All right. Um, he starts as a vegetarian. He talks about the brutality of certain things, or he finds he's eaten like the tiger now. He's a wild animal. Uh, he'll say some little thing you think, well, that could be kind of gross, but on the other hand, on a lifeboat, yeah, I can understand you get hungry enough to eat raw fish and it tastes good. I've eaten raw fish just because my friends say it's good. So, and he makes a big deal of it. And then at one point, when he's on the Meerkat Island and he's tested the ground for for if it's poisonous at night, he climbs down from his tree. Um, he climbs back up in the tree and kills two meerkats just to smear their blood and guts on his foot, and it doesn't even help. And he mentions nothing about the brutality of that and how far he's gone. He leaves that for the reader to notice. Um, so a big part of the movie, and I think this was really dealt with in the book even better, was he has the story about the animals, and then he has another story about his family, or no, not his family, his mother, that they were people. Well, he doesn't say the animals were people, but you can see the parallels. And now I thought in the movie that he had given a third option that, like, well, neither of them happened. My family died, and I floated at sea and survived for a long time, and then they found me. Um, and frankly, if this was a true story, then that would be most likely that there was uneventful, but severe hardship at sea, and he had plenty of supplies for a boat of 30 survivors, and he just survived. And when I saw the movie too, I thought, well, that's right. I mean, the main thing is this isn't trying to be a true story. It's a construction. So he tells one story about the animals on the boat and the story itself over a long period of time and in great detail. Then he tells a really short, terrible story about how it was people and cannibalism at sea in just one chapter. And I thought it was interesting that your mind goes, oh, that's what really happened, and the other was a metaphor. But the whole thing is a metaphor, right? It's fiction. And I kind of thought the movie was making this point. Now, in the book, there was no third option. He tells the second story, but he leaves it at that. And I would say in the book, it's more clear that's the true story. And yet the Japanese investigators and whatnot are you know uh, as they're trying to pick apart his story, and they see some of the parallels when he tells the second story, and it's like, but what about the meerkats? And so here's the thing: in the book, uh, there were mongoose or meerkat, or there were bones of the meerkats that he found on the Meerkat Island. Well, science fiction wise, that's the part that totally, because tigers are real. They set up how he ended up in the boat with the tiger. They set up why he did his weird approach and trained the tiger. And they did a better chance in the book. In the book, he thinks about trying to attack the tiger with the hatchets he has. He thinks about shooting him with the flare gun. He thinks about this stuff. And he comes up with good reasons that it probably won't work. He actually comes up with what I thought would be a plan, would probably what I would have tried, which would be to strangle the tiger. But in the end, his plan is the best. He trains the tiger to respect space. And okay, anyway, so the most far-fetched of this part of the story that might have a biological impossibility to it, since nobody's ever found any such thing, is that floating Meerkat Island. Well, there's another part that didn't make it in the movie where he goes blind for a couple days and he meets another blind guy who then tries to kill him, and the tiger kills. Anyway, okay. So what I was going to say is he's designed this where the only evidence for anything that he said is that somehow out to sea he came across a bunch of meerkats or mongoose or rats. I mean, a lot of rodents that he had with him because he killed some meerkats when he left the island, and they were on the boat when the boat made it to Mexico. So the only evidence that he's offering in his story is of the meerkats, which is the most far-fetched, right? So I think that the issue really is that one, I found that it reveals how easy it is to go for the pessimistic story. You have a fictional story about a castaway. He offers two stories, and you're trying to figure out which one's real. Odd already, neither one's real. The author's name is not Pai Patel. He's not trying to tell you an autobiography. It's a novel. So that's weird. And then just the incredible attraction of the story where, and it's kind of a familiar story, people go crazy at sea and killings and cannibalism, and sometimes justifiable, sometimes heinous, sometimes both, possibly. Okay, so it's a somewhat familiar story, so that might be one reason that you'd believe it. But the way he tells it, it's no more believable than the tiger story, and it doesn't say how a bunch of meerkat bones got on his boat. So it's weird to me how attractive the story of human brutality version, with where the mom floats up on the bananas, which in the book they confirm do float, um, versus the animals, which is also a terrible story, where the orangutan floats up on the bananas. So I think that's one point. Now, getting to this idea, uh, which is obviously at least a tippity tip point of the story. The last sentence, the Japanese investigators, having been told both stories, decide to relay the Bengal tiger story slightly. Mostly they don't talk about it because they're trying to find out why the ship sank, but they mention, oh, and it was remarkably survived with the Bengal tiger on board. So, and that made you feel good because those guys could have chosen either story, and they're like, well, it doesn't affect what we're here for, to find out why the boat sank. So, okay, now on to religion. Is this, and this is why I read the novel, is the point really that you should believe in God because it's a better sounding story? And I find the way he's dealt with that very enlightening. Something a lot of YouTube atheists, for example, could probably do well to contemplate. Okay. Now, what I found in the book is first of all, there's more evidence for things that seem to be going on in the movie about this. Um, First of all three of his spiritual teachers, the Hindu, the Muslim, and the Christian, they all happen on his family. That's how it gets revealed that he believes in all these different religions and has been going so devoutly, and none of those teachers knew the other ones existed, and they fight and they quarrel. And he's like, I just want to love God. And they're all a little embarrassed, but they're like, yeah, that's great. But they all, three of those teachers agree there's freedom of religious practice in India, practice singular. So I don't think right now, having just finished the book, I don't take it as advocating theism in general or religion in general. I think it's better, and possibly the only reason the guy in the book has the three religions is the guy has taken the best aspects of the three religions. He goes to Christianity as a Hindu, where it has a reputation for just a few violent gods, and he goes in there, and the God on the cross, compared to powerful, the gods of Indian lore, have plenty of misery and struggle to go through. But being on a cross, it's just like Nietzsche points out. That's the amazing thing, the awe-inspiring thing, probably about Christianity, is you have people familiar with gods the world round, and the God on the cross, the suffering God. Odd idea. Um, but he comes to see it as a religion of love, and partly because the rectors there really are waiting for parishioners and to try to help them emotionally and with love. Right? And then the Muslim thing is like, oh, it had a reputation of even being more violent and this and that. But he happens upon this Muslim guy who's just a baker, and he's excited by the fact that you don't have to go to the mosque for that matter. You have your prayer mat. He does it right in his bakery shop, and he ends up finding that Islam is a religion of brotherhood. It has a great sense of brotherhood available within it. And And whenever he's marveling at the wonder of nature, he's doing it through Allah, um, and with Islam as a religion that doesn't need miracles because nature is a miracle, right? In other words, it's not that religion. I don't think the point of the book is that religion is the best story. It's more like everything is a story. If you're trying to tell a dry story about what happened, it's still, you know, a story. It might be a better story, but it's still going to be a story. We always have to choose a story. And a religion like Islam or Christianity is not just one story. There's multiple ways to take it. Now in college, I lived at I dormed at a Catholic school that I did not attend. That happened to have a lot of international students, including many Muslims from Singapore, Saudi Arabia, and I met many kinds of Muslims, and I met the kind of Muslims for whom Islam is a sense of community, and not just for other people of their faith, but I mean a community of nature, and I see how that's different. And Christians as well. I've met Christians that follow a positive lesson out of what they think of Christianity and Christ. And obviously, there's fundamentalists that are using it as an excuse to have, violent imagery on a placard. Fags should die. Here's a dead fetus. So I've always noticed there's, like the way I always put it is religion is a language. Christianity is a language. Two Christians don't believe the same thing about Christ, but they have the word Christ in common. They can kind of try to talk to each other through that language. But you can be warlike, you can be peaceful, you can be a fascist, you can be a socialist, because it's just a language. And the way it's put in the Life of Pi, it's that it's a story. Which story are you going to tell of the faith that you have? Which story are you going to tell of the experiences that you have? Um, but on the issue of, was the book advocating telling false stories? No. No, it does not advocate telling false stories. It's a very raw, it's a very raw book in terms of facing the monster that's within and facing yourself with truth, but that truth is more emotional and in your reactions. Like if the story with the animals was true or the story with the humans on the life raft were true, either way, he told the story, sort of his emotional reactions were similar. So where is the truth in this? And keeping in mind the whole thing is a fictional creation. There is no character really feeling one thing or really experiencing one or another. It's a work that shows the dynamism of all these issues. Oh, I forget. Before I started this video, I had a great example of how the scientific answers are also still stories and have options. Um, but a real Okay, I remember. This will work for some of you that are familiar with the interview I'm going to refer to. Like Hythlide, I know has seen it. But there's a video where Feynman talks about his poet friend who complains when Feynman sees the flower as all these chemical biological processes, and his poet friend is like, you drain all the life out of it. Or maybe his friend's a painter actually, and when with the idea that the painter paints the flower and he captures and do it. No, both of those are a story. A painting or a poem about a flower, that's a story about the flower. The description of it biologically and chemical, that's also a story. And Feynman is the kind of scientist that says, well, the scientific story is beautiful too. And especially because it's true, it maps so well to what's going on in the flower. It's not just a representation, it's a representation of something more essential, and there's a beauty in that, whether it's true or not. Maybe that's only true in a poetic sense, because it's just a story too. Okay, so the reason I think this is a good example is it cuts both ways, right? Okay, On the one hand, you can't say the scientific explanation is not beautiful, right? It's a story, it can incorporate beauty. There's maybe more than one versions of the story, a version of the scientific version, subversions, different ways of putting the scientific story, some more beautiful than others, right? And so you can't really rob that. I mean, I agree with Feynman. That does not rob the flower of beauty because that story is also beautiful. But it also goes the other way. The scientific story is still just a story. Now, I like to take the scientific story, and I think that The Life of Pi is recommending that, okay, you like scientific stories, then go ahead and take the most beautiful of the scientific stories available. Right? You can have your criteria that say I can only accept these kinds of stories. These are the ones that suit my palate. At all. And then you can choose the best among those. That's what I think he was saying, and it's an interesting thing to contemplate.